So we'll see this is a end to side brachiocephalic fistula, end of the cephalic vein to brachial artery. You can see cephalic vein here, which is ligated somewhere at this level, brachial artery, arteriotomy done, and this is an end to side anastomosis. And if you see here, we have put two liga clips here. This is a side branch of the cephalic vein which was going on this side. Now it is very important to cut these side branches, then only you will get good development of a long segment of the vein in the arm. What happens if you keep this vein intact, if you don't clip this and cut this vein, the blood flow will go antegrade as well as in retrograde fashion. Because of the pressure itself, the valve will eventually get dysfunctional and the flow will go in retrograde fashion. And then the flow across the vein, when you prick the vein for hemodialysis, may reduce. You may not get good flow rates across the veins. You may get venous hypertension in the forearm because then the blood is all going to go in the retrograde manner as well. So that can cause problems. This happens especially in a distal fistula where if you keep that vein, then you can get steel phenomenon and venous hypertension in the fingers, and fingers can have ulcerations and discoloration. This is a conventional brachiobasilic transposition fistula, where if you see there's a long incision on the medial aspect of the arm. The vein is transposed anteriorly into the subcutaneous plane. So this is how you have to mobilize the entire basilic vein, get it in front, close this thing, get the vein in subcutaneous plane, and then anastomose it with the brachial artery. Now this is a step by step. This is where you have a brachial artery. This is the basilic vein. This is the long incision that we have marked. We start exposing the vein. You can see the vein is identified here. This is an antecubital vein here, and this is a basilic vein. So as you see, the basilic vein is completely dissected from the subfacial level. You have to preserve the medial cutaneous nerve of forearm here, and sometimes it goes between the two branches. So once you do an ligate the vein here, you have to take the vein out through the branches. As we have done here, you see both the branches of the nerves are kept intact. We generally fill it with heparinized saline and put clamps at both the ends so that the vein remains filled when we do transposition. As you can see here, we cut the edge of the fascia here and suture the edge of the fascia underneath the vein. As you can see here, this is the vein that is completely filled. The fascia is sutured here so that the vein is now in the subcutaneous plane, and the distal end of the vein is taken out from here, and then it is done, then anastomosed with the brachial artery. So as you can see here, the vein is here, somewhere here in the subcutaneous plane, and once you release the clamps, the flow will start, and this vein will become superficialized and it will be easily seen on Doppler examination. This is a fistula which is a mature AV fistula. As you can see here, a well dilated vein. This is a basilic vein, but seen in the superficial and easily accessible. Here to make a IV access is difficult. So once you transpose the vein anteriorly, so the vein is actually in the course of the cephalic vein now. This basilic vein we have converted into course of the cephalic vein. And this is on Doppler. You can see a good. Is that Doppler sound audible?
No, sir.
No, okay. Anyway, I shared the audio, but I don't know why it is not. So, brachiobasilic transposition fistula, the advantages we have seen that the vein is in subfacial location, so easy. It is a good quality vein, good diameter vein. If the cephalic system is not available, it's always there. Less chances of thrombosis. It has got a large caliber, and it is not easily pricked because of its virtue of subfacial location. The disadvantages of this fistula are it requires a longer incision, and it's a difficult surgery compared to a standard AV fistula where you require a regional block or a general anesthesia to do this procedure. Being long incision, there are always chances of hematoma or seroma formation at the surgical site. So what is the modification that we have done for our proximal fistulas? Our proximal fistulas by this modification where we do a side-to-side anastomosis either with the brachial artery and the antecubital vein or the basilic vein. It develops multiple veins over forearm by retrograde flow. How we have already seen how the retrograde flow takes place, but here the trick is different. Because the retrograde veins develop on the forearm, they are easy to be cannulated, and it avoids a long incision on the medial aspect of the arm. The procedure can be done under local anesthesia and the complications associated with the long incision. So what we do is take a small incision just above the elbow joint level, expose the brachial artery and the vein. And once you identify the vein, we make a venotomy, pass a long head vessel dilator. This we have particularly designed for this particular surgery. So after venotomy, a vessel dilator is put inside till you see the first bifurcation of the vein here, as you can see, because this is the site where you will have a first valve in the vein. So your venous dilator has to pass across it. As you can see here, there is tip of the catheter is somewhere here, and this is the site of the valve. And this is how intraoperatively it is done. Now, I just want to make a point here that if you see the venotomy is already done, the arteriotomy is done, but we have put clamps on the arterial side. On the venous side, there are no clamps on the distal side, but there is no blood flow coming from here. And once you do a venotomy, sorry. Once the valve is made dysfunctional, you'll see a good flow coming from the vein side. And then this distal retrograde flow is confirmed by flushing hyperenized saline. At the same time, the assistant puts his finger on the forearm vein to feel the thrill when you are actually flushing the hyperenized saline. Once you confirm the thrill, you complete the anastomosis by, again, in the same fashion. It's a side-to-side anastomosis. It is not end-to-side anastomosis.
तो कट कर दिया.
And this is how.
उसको बोल थोड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट ये है मीटिंग.
So this is a side-to-side anastomosis. You can see that nicely dilated vein in the distal part, and you will be easily able to access this vein here. There will be flow going proximally also, but when we do a side-to-side anastomosis, we normally get a kink on the proximal side, and we keep that kink as it is so that the flow goes preferably in the retrograde fashion rather than going in the proximal fashion. This is the site of anastomosis, and this is how you get a nicely developed vein on the forearm. So the advantages are, it is done again through a smaller incision under local anesthesia, no general anesthesia or axillary block is required. There is limited dissection, less chances of hematoma formation, development of forearm veins which is easy to be accessed for dialysis with good flow rates. And you always have a backup plan. In case your forearm veins by repeated pricks get thrombosed, you can always superficialize the proximal basilic vein, which is in continuity with your anastomosis, and make it superficialize and transpose anteriorly and keep it in the subcutaneous plane, so that vein can again be used for dialysis. So this is a kind of backup plan. So in case, because these fistulas normally work beautifully, and maybe a couple of years down because of multiple pricks or because of some reasons the distal forearm vein get thrombosed, you always have this backup plan with you. You don't need to do the fistula all over again. You can just superficialize that vein and start the dialysis through the same vein immediately without waiting for the maturation, because that vein has already matured. So we did a study of our cases, and we have published this study also of 145 patients where we have done this new technique of AV fistula and compared with a conventional brachiobasilic transposition fistula, where if you see it is the results are more or less the same. The maturation time is same. Of course, we have a larger number of patients, and primary patency rates, if you see, we have 80% primary patency rates. Ease of access was not compared in the study, where we have said ease of access is what we have given. We had given a questionnaire to the dialysis technicians that they have to let us know in first prick how many times the fistula was pricked, whether they require two pricks for the dialysis to start or a single prick. So in 83% of our patients, we had single prick required to initiate the dialysis. The complication rate, obviously, with a brachiobasilic conventional transposition fistula was very high, as you can see in all these series, because of a long incision, chances of hematoma and seroma formation, and it's significantly less in our series. Coming to the angle of anastomosis, because this is very important, and there are multiple angles which are described. So the angle of anastomosis that gives minimized wall shear stress was 18 degrees. So anything between 18 degrees to 35 degrees is a good angle of end to side anastomosis as far as the shear stress is concerned. And we have to really at the end of the anastomosis see that after clipping your side branches and everything, the angle remains the same. If you keep the length of the vein too much, after you release the clamps, the vein is going to elongate a bit, and then it can lead to a natural kink, which has to be specifically seen for at the end of the anastomosis. And in case you have kept a longer length of the vein, then definitely there will be a kink, and that will cause a kind of outflow obstruction to across the fistula, and eventually the fistula will fail. So then you probably need to revise the anastomosis by shortening the length of the vein. Now this is how the dialysis is initiated. The fistula is done here. This is an end-to-side radiocephalic standard fistula. There's a long segment of the vein which is developed on the hand here, and the technician is making an prick towards with the needle tip towards the AV fistula. So this is from where the outflow is going to take place, and this is for the return of blood back into the body after it passes through the dialyzer machine. So this is how a prick is made. It's on the one single vein that we have developed. That's the reason, and that's the importance of having a long single segment of the vein easily accessible for dialysis. Now there are two different types of techniques for making a prick into this vein. One is called as a step ladder technique, where you can prick the vein at different sites every time the patient comes for dialysis. That is called as a step ladder technique. And the other technique is a buttonhole technique, where, as you see, when he made a prick here, there was already a kind of discoloration here. So in a buttonhole technique, you prick the fistula at the same time again and again. Of course, you can go into the literature and see there are advantages and disadvantages of both the techniques, buttonhole technique and the step ladder technique. And I think every dialysis unit follows a different protocol of its own. So coming to flow rates across the AV fistula, the normal brachial artery flow rate is about 85 ml per minute. With AV fistula, the flow multiplies at least 5 to 10 times. Now, intraoperatively, if you make flow measurement across the AV fistula, radiocephalic AV fistula, it will be about 300 ml per minute. In a brachiocephalic, as you go proximal, obviously the flow rates will be more, 700 to about a liter per minute. And as the vessels dilate and as the vein dilates and matures, becomes arterialized, the flow is obviously going to increase. So a desirable flow rate across the dialysis should be at least more than 350 ml per minute for an effective hemodialysis to be commissioned. So post-operative instructions, as in the pamphlet, we have clearly mentioned for the distal or a wrist fistula, he has to do handball exercises For a proximal fistula, he can take a bottle of half a liter of water and just do a kind of dumbbell kind of exercises. Patients are instructed to feel the thrill every day, feel any coldness or numbness or ulceration of fingertips, which are early signs of your steel phenomenon. They should report to the OPD immediately. A word about anticoagulation. In our all three publications that we have done a direct we tried to assess correlation of using heparin, ecosprin, or low molecular weight heparin or a regular heparin or antiplatelet agents, but we have found that there is no statistical significant correlation between any of the anticoagulation used. My personal experience, I give a single shot of low molecular weight heparin 2500 units, single shot at the end of the surgery. And if the vessel wall is atherosclerotic, patient is diabetic, ecosprin for 3 days post surgery. So why do AV fistulas fail? Either it's an immediate failure, could be because of improper selection of the vein or artery or the site for fistula, or it could be a technical failure where you have taken a anterior and posterior wall together at the time of anastomosis. But most of the times we will be able to diagnose that at end of the surgery. A non-maturing AV fistula could be because of a juxta-anastomotic stenosis or a development of accessory vein, which we have already discussed, or could be a delayed failure because of thrombosis, because of hypotension, cephalic arch vein thrombosis, which can lead to retrograde decrease in pressure. So this is what happens when you have a perianastomotic stenosis. So this is an artery, this is a vein, and if you have an anastomotic stenosis, you will be able to feel a weak thrill here, and you should be able to diagnose that the flow rate has reduced, the thrill has reduced. Then you should definitely do a Doppler and if required an angio to identify the anastomotic stenosis. As discussed, there can be various ways to correct it, either by doing an interventional procedure or you can go in for a new fistula at a higher level. Sometimes you get a pulsatile AV fistula where the AV fistula is working fine. You feel normal thrill and bruit at the fistula site, but as you go proximal on the vein, the fistula thrill has the flow has reduced. Then probably it is a stenosis which is away from the fistula site. So this stenosis can happen either because you made a vascular access prick, like a buttonhole technique. If you keep on pricking the same site every time the patient comes for dialysis, and sometimes there is a counter prick and there is a local hematoma formation, this can lead to stenosis at this particular level, and then you have a reduced flow distal to the prick site or distal to the constriction site. And this is what is called as recirculation. So if you get a anastomotic, the anastomosis is absolutely fine. You have a distal obstruction somewhere. Then the blood is going to, and if you make two pricks like the technician did in the same video, say one prick at this level and the other prick at this level, is going to be the recirculation within the fistula, and you're not going to have an effective urea and creatinine clearance in such cases. So an ideal AV fistula should give a flow of about 250 to 350 ml per hour for the entire duration of dialysis, for what 3 or 4 hours of dialysis without recirculation. That word is very important. Only then you will be able to have an effective effective dialysis through the AV fistula. So endovascular treatments for malfunctioning fistulas, either in form of angioplasty or by putting stents or by thrombolysis, not practical in our country because it's more costly and it is cheaper to do a new fistula rather than going in for this interventional radiology procedures. But if the patient is affording, doesn't want to undergo another surgery, then definitely there are options to salvage the fistula. These are some of the complications where you can get a massive limb edema. Most likely it is because of the central venous stenosis which was missed, and then you do a fistula and there is obstruction at a higher level here in the vein, then you will get this kind of limb edema. So preoperative assessment is important. excessive flow across the fistula because you have done a larger diameter fistula, as you can see here. This can lead to a kind of hypermegaly in the limb, discoloration of the steel phenomenon. Sometimes you get discoloration of the fingertips. Yeah, here you can see steel phenomenon, gangrene or discoloration of the fingertips. And in such cases, you need sometimes patients come late, then you require amputation of the fingertips, or you can identify this early, then you can ligate the distal runoff, the vein which is developed causing distal runoff, and convert a fistula to end to side if it's become a side to side fistula. So in a distal wrist level fistula, never do a side to side fistula at this level, because then this kind of problems are very common. Initially, we started doing side to side fistula, and after we encountered a couple of such problems, we have now stopped doing distal side to side fistula. All our radiocephalic fistulas are end to side fistulas. Sometimes you can get aneurysm formation either at the fistula site itself, or sometimes at the site where they are doing regular buttonhole pricks for hemodialysis. And why we as plastic surgeons should venture into this field, as we have already said that we have the expertise to do it. We know how to do vascular anastomosis. Only thing that needs to be learned is the medical part of which, most of which we have discussed now. There is tremendous patient workload, so we have good number of patients, opens a new field for us. And we are in those people who are in private practice who are not doing microsurgery day in and out. It will keep you in touch with microsurgery, and so that even if you are not doing regular free flaps, you'll be doing micro anastomosis every now and then in terms of AV fistula surgery. So this is our experience. We've done 3 publications. We did 2 national CMEs also in Pune and hands-on workshop on porcine vessels. The last one was, I think, in January 2019, and it was due this year because every alternate year we are doing these workshops. But now because of COVID, we will have to postpone this probably for the next year. So this was our first publication in Indian Journal of Nephrology. These are all open access journals. You can always search on the net and download this and go through it. This was in Indian Journal of Plastic Surgery, and this is on D.Y. Patil Medical Journal. This is about a new technique that we have done. These are some of the conclusions from our publications. And in fact, we went to extensive literature search, and this was the first time in our first publication that we established a direct correlation between presence of bruit felt on operation table and thrill felt on operation table with the success rate, with significant p-values. So if you don't have bruit and thrill at end of the surgery, better spend some extra time in operation theater, see what is the problem, technically issues, if there are any, why there is no bruit and thrill. Because once you have bruit and thrill both in place on operation table, then very less chances that your fistula will fail in post-operative period. So these are all available in the publications, so you can go through them. Flow rates again in diabetes, obviously a chance of failure are more. As you see here, there is no significant correlation between the site of the fistula and the success rate. Similarly, no association between side of the which arm was used, what was the type of anastomosis, what kind of suture material was used. So we compared 8-0 monofilament with 7-0 polypropylene, also no difference. No role of post-operative anticoagulation. So basically, if your technique is good and if you get good bruit and thrill on operation table, then very high chances that you will succeed. These are some of the pictures of the workshops that we have conducted. So thank you, viewers, for patient hearing, and I'll be happy to answer questions if any.
Thank you, sir, for the very exhaustive discussion on AV fistulas. I think there will be so many people who would be wanting to ask questions. We will just check it out, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in case there is no bruit and thrill felt,
yes.
then what is the chances of that surviving? that actually being patent later on to develop. No? So because we are normally, if that is not coming,
Yes.
you keep it over there and then you wait for, I think,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, sometimes veins, I mean the bruit or thrill might appear the next day also if your size of the artery and vein is very less. Some people have done intraoperative venous dilatation by putting catheters or infant feeding tubes inside the vein to dilate the vein so that you get development of good bruit and thrill. But I generally don't do any intervention in the vein on the vein side, and majority of the cases we do get bruit and thrill. If your site selection, the size of the vein and artery is correct, then very unlikely that you will not develop bruit or thrill on operation table. You either have to develop bruit or thrill. Either of the thing is okay. I mean, if you get both, then nothing like that. But even if you get bruit and no thrill, the thrill will eventually come. It will also depend on the size of the anastomosis, the atherosclerosis diameter. If there are any atherosclerotic plaques which are floating across the anastomosis, that can also cause low flow rates, leading to less thrill or no thrill. So most of the times it is intraoperative. I mean, the anastomotic factors that we can check at the end of the surgery. Or sometimes you might have a side vein which is pulling that vein laterally so much that there is a kink there. So it is causing an outflow obstruction. The moment you release that accessory vein or you clip that accessory vein and the tension on the vein is reduced, you will get a good flow across the anastomosis.
Okay, sir. So for all the cases, do you do a Doppler before you proceed with the AV fistula?
No, if I see on clinical examination, I'm pretty sure that there is good quality of vein which is visible on venous tunicate application and good arterial pulsations of felt. I don't do Doppler ultrasound in all the cases. So only in selective cases I do a Doppler ultrasound. But the National Kidney Foundation guideline says that you have to do Doppler ultrasound in all the cases. So maybe for exam purpose for students, when they have been asked, they should definitely say that Doppler ultrasound should be done in all the cases.
Is there any comparative study between doing continuous suture and interrupted sutures for the AV fistula creation?
No, there is no comparative study which I've come across, and I think more or less it is about the training, because we generally do microvascular anastomosis with interrupted sutures. And if you go to cardiovascular surgeons, they will do all continuous sutures. They do continuous sutures even for cardiac anastomosis. So I think it's more about what you are comfortable with and what you are convenient to do for you.
Lakshmi madam, anything?
Sir, in doing this end-to side anastomosis, the arteriotomy you do, it's preferable to do on anterior surface or lateral, sir?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In fact, I forgot to mention when we talked about arteriotomy. One first thing is that you have to, in a patient who is diabetic, there is bound to be some atherosclerosis. So you have to select the site of arteriotomy correctly. Accordingly, you trim your vein when you are doing end-to-side anastomosis. If a particular patch of the artery is atherosclerotic and you can obviously see plaques inside, then better avoid that segment for the anastomosis. Because the moment you take an incision with a 11 number blade, very likely that your intima and adventitia will separate, and the intima will the thing will start floating inside. So you select a proper segment of the artery which is relatively less atherosclerotic, and the direction of the vein, from where the vein is going to approach the artery, accordingly you take an incision, because the vein is coming from the lateral side. And if you took too much of anterior or medial incision on the artery, or too much of medial or anterior arteriotomy, then the vein is have to cross across to do over the vein, and then there will be a kink there. So it has to be a natural course of the vein where it lies near to the artery. There you do an arteriotomy.
For all cases, do you actually give any thrombolytic, I mean, aspirin or any other agents do you give? Or,
yes, single dose of low molecular weight heparin, 2,500 units of I give single dose in all cases.
okay.
And only if the patient has got history of previous thrombosis or any collagen vascular disorders, then I give a post-operative ecosprin, or sometimes in cases where we have got patients with SLE, we have found that these patients are very likely to get thrombosis of the fistula immediately. So we give sometimes warfarin also in those patients.
Along with that, Barrett, initially at least.
Yeah.
So actually,
So when there is how much is failure rate in brachiocephalic fistula, sir? The proximal ones.
The proximal veins, the fistula failure is very less, not even 1 to 2%, because you have got good diameter. The brachial artery is almost 3 to 4 millimeter in diameter, more than 4 millimeters sometimes in diameter. Cephalic vein is also of good diameter, very less chances of failure. Failure are more common in distal fistulas, especially with severe atherosclerotic and in diabetic patients.
Sir, I think all the questions in the chat box, everything is over.
Your modification is very good. Yeah?
Hello?
Yeah,
as you described, the modification is very useful, but you kept it as a third preference.
No, this is, see, what I've put
Before
that in slide is the yes, because brachiobasilic transposition. No, because that is, I have kept it as third before doing a conventional transposition of basilic vein.
Usually we prefer brachiocephalic.
Yeah,
if there
so
is any failure, then only you will.
Yes. So brachiocephalic at the proximal level is the second option. First option is distal radiocephalic. Second option is brachiocephalic. Third is this modification, and then you go for a longer incision and a transposition of basilic vein.
Yes. It's a really lucid and useful, informative lecture, sir. We are very thankful. Sandeep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. It is actually very exhaustive. I've not listened to many AV fistula lectures, but this one in detail, you have told all the practical aspects also. And I'm sure that this would be a landmark kind of a discussion that you have done. And then anyone who is actually going to do AV fistula would be actually coming back to this particular lecture and then seeing it, and only then actually going ahead and doing these cases. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today this Saturday evening and discussing, taking all the time out and discussing in detail about AV fistulas. Thank you very much, sir, for joining again.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, madam. And thank you
you
all the
sir.
participants. Any particular questions anybody has, you can even put me a personal WhatsApp and I'll be happy to answer that.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Good night. Stay safe, sir. Stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.